This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Bear Boat Alaska. Up your DIY hunting game with one of their 37-foot adventure yachts. You and 5 of your friends can hunt, fish, set crab pots, shrimp pots, and take DIY to the next level. Bear Boat Alaska is locally owned by a Ketchikan resident who lives here year-round. Call Larry at 907-617-4542 or go to bearboatalaska.com. That's B-A-R-E boatalaska.com and tell Larry you heard about it on this podcast. Welcome back to the podcast. I have Brad Brooks from Argali on. This is his third podcast within the last calendar year. You were on in November of 2021, August of 2021, and that was to preview and then recap your Hunt North, which is now premiering on YouTube. So thanks for being on here again for the third time in the last 12 months.
Oh, thanks, man. Honestly, I didn't realize that. It feels like the first time. So, yeah, I couldn't remember the last time we had chatted, Jeff. So, yeah, I couldn't remember the last time we had chatted, Jeff.
Yeah, I was looking back just so I could get an idea of kind of what we had talked about. And I know that we previewed the trip and then we'd recapped it too. And so I kind of knew a lot about that stuff. So this time I want to talk to you about some of the products and stuff that you have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you kind of started pretty slow and diligent and deliberate, I think would be the word that I would most use. Why that approach to putting out products? Some people try to come out and they just flood the market with a whole bunch of hats and shirts and a whole bunch of just stuff and then figure it out as they go. But you've been very deliberate with your game bags and your knives and your belts and now your tent. Why that approach?
That's a interesting question you asked, Jeff. So at least from my standpoint, it has been very deliberate and intentional. There's a couple reasons why. Number one, it has to do with the amount of time and energy and focus I can give or we can give collectively to any one product or product category to get it to a point where I feel like it's as good as we can do before sending it out in the universe and asking people to part with their hard-earned money in order to buy it. So I just personally, I take that very seriously, that relationship with the customer, and I would never ask anybody to buy something that I don't feel like is as good as we say it is. And what that really means is that process takes a long time and it's a fairly intensive process. And yeah, there's only so many hours in the day. And so I have to focus in on one thing and really try and do it well. So there's that part of it. And I would say there are like, I'd be lying if I said there aren't just, financial reasons as well. As a company, you can only afford to do so many things. And, do one, do it well. And if that does well, then you have the luxury of moving on to something else. I would say just in terms of the products that we currently sell, I didn't start saying like, these are the things we're going to sell and make, and this is the order in which we're going to do it. I wish I could claim that I had a vision that was that clear. That's not the case. What really happened is each of them have been built for a specific purpose, but the reasons that they have come out in the sequence that they have, and we can talk about that, is largely because we make products where we feel as though there is an opportunity to solve a problem in the marketplace or within our community or for our customers that exists. The way in which those problems are discovered is quite literally from doing the thing, right? From hunting, from spending time in the field. That is how the idea for everything that we make that's where it's come from. Game bags were the first thing that we made. And at the time that we made game bags, I would venture to say, and I don't mean this in like a boastful way, but technical game bags were really not a thing except for there were really two companies that I'll give credit to. And that's Caribou Game Gear was making some game bags, and Tag Bags out of Alaska was making some game bags. But both of those products, which I'm not saying anything bad about any of them, but we thought that there was some opportunity to do something different than what was being offered at the time. Now it seems like there are a lot of other companies doing something similar to what we did. Anyways, but at the time, there was an opportunity to make something different. So that's why we kind of pursued that route. So I don't know if that answers your question, Jeff.
No, no, it does. I was just thinking about the game bag thing, because I went from, when I first started hunting, it was a guy that I went hunting with had old pillowcases. And that was his idea of reusable, just pillowcases. Okay, that makes sense. I went hunting with someone else, and they used just bags, like a couple quart-sized Ziploc bags, a couple gallon-sized Ziploc bags, because it was just a day hunt. So you go up there, shoot it, come back down. But then I went to the cheap whatever cheesecloth-looking stuff. And so again, I don't know how I got onto your site and looked at your game bags. So I thought, oh, this is pretty sweet. Then I got them. I thought, oh, this is a whole different thing, and the reflective lettering, and then the drawstring.
Yep.
How many iterations did you go through? You seem like a pretty meticulous guy. Were you was it 15 to 20 type things, or did you give the correct design and then you got the prototype back and it was pretty close?
No. It took a long time. It took a lot of different sewing. Yeah. Let's see. The different pieces took longer than other. The fabric took a long time. That's really the meat and potatoes of our product, is the fabric. So just finding that fabric is what took a long time. Once we had the fabric and the thread and the paracord, all the raw materials, the sewing was the easy part, and the designs, it didn't take that long. But finding that fabric took a very long time. I went to a lot of different fabric mills and talked to them about the product. Not most of them. All of them did not understand what I was saying. They're like, you want to, because they all ask, what's the application that you're looking to use this fabric for? And I explained it to them, and they're just looked at me like I was crazy. What? You put dead animals in sacks? I'm like, yes, this is the thing people do. So it was hard to find. So that's what took the longest amount of time. That's really because when you're making, fabric mills will make fabric. They have standard fabrics that they make. Most of them also have fabrics that they are making, trying to sell a particular fabric to a company. It's like, we'll make this particular, a company might say, we're going to make this particular fabric because we think it might be applicable to the outdoor market. And then they go and to outdoor companies that sell finished goods, and they're like, look at this fabric. Isn't this amazing? Don't you want to use it in your product? With game bags, there really isn't any fabric mill out there making a fabric for game bags specifically, because the market, quite frankly, is pretty small and minuscule. Right. So for me to find a fabric for game bags, it's like I wasn't going to a fabric mill and saying, show me your fabrics that you have for game bags, because they didn't have any. So I had to teach myself about fabrics, teach myself about weaves, and what is the ideal balance between durability and weight, and do some of our own product testing, and then weight tests and all that stuff. And that definitely took it took me probably, better part of 2 years to figure all that out. And then there's the whole sewing process and playing around with different type of sewing techniques and stitching, and that's a whole nother. Yeah, the manufacturing process always takes longer than you think, and even though it looks like a simple product, it took a long time.
Mm-hmm. While you were working on that, did you have another project going at the same time? Are you Yeah, so you were overlapping a little bit. It wasn't, I need to finish this first before I move on. You were doing more than one thing?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, even though focus is important, it doesn't mean I'm not thinking about or playing around with something else. So when we first got started, we were nearing the end of the product phase for the game bags, and I had already decided that we were going to work on knives. Like knives were the next other thing we were going to make, and I had already been playing around with some designs on that front, but it was less serious for me until I figured out how, like, it was like, okay, I'm going to get to knives as soon as I kind of solve this game bag problem. But the way product design works for me is typically it's like it comes in waves, in terms of I might go through an intense period where there's a lot of work that I have to do between designing, working with factories, the fabric mills, and whoever else, right? And then there might be a gap in time where there isn't anything for me to do because I'm waiting on somebody else to do something. It's okay, I don't need to work on that for the next month. And so rather than, take a deep breath and go do something fun, I would just dive right back into the next thing. And that for me was knives. So I would use those gaps in working on the game bags to flesh out our knife line.
Flesh out, that's a good term there. Did you have
I didn't mean to.
Just naturally
salesman.
Were there some sunk costs with some things, or was there like a long lost Argali multi-tool out there somewhere, or something else that just did not make it? Like, hey, forget that. We're going to table that indefinitely to get focused on the stuff that we're putting out.
I mean, I have wasted a lot of money. I think any business owner will tell you that. Not wasted probably isn't the right term, but I've spent money on things that I thought would pan out that didn't. And there are things that let's see. No, I haven't had a product that's been a loser yet. And I need to knock on wood here. That where we've come out with it and we've just been like, that sucked. Let's just like bury that thing deep down and let it see the light of day. No, but there have been things like, let's say, I remember this might be applicable to some folks out there, but when we first got started, you're a small company, you're like, well, how do we, beyond or the people that know about us right now, how do we get the word out? So it was like, we should invest in a digital ads company. And no offense to anybody that works in the digital ad space, but it is a very interesting mix of companies out there. There are some phenomenal companies. We work with a great company now, but at the time I didn't know how to filter out the good from the bad. And there's a lot of snake oil sales going on out there. And we worked with a digital ad company and put what I thought at the time was for me, it was a significant amount of money into a strategy that netted absolutely nothing in return. And it was just like so gut wrenching because, you look at 6 months later, you're like, we just spent how much money and got nothing, literally, not nothing, but like very little in return. And so that sucked. So yeah, there have been some sunk costs, but no product ideas that are just like sitting on the shelf that we're never gonna develop, at least not yet.
Yeah, it really seems like it's a tough thing. The writing world's very similar, and like, how are you going to connect people with, your columns and your books? And I have asked myself that all the time, and so I want to spend certain money but make it worthwhile. There's a lot of stuff that just doesn't seem at all like it's worth it, even like on a small scale. Something like sponsored things on YouTube or on Instagram and Facebook just do not seem to be worth it whatsoever. So like, well, do I want to? Is it a matter of time? Should I have stuck with it longer? I don't know, but man, that getting started is pretty tough.
I think that's right, and there are different ways of learning. One is spend money, take notes, and see what happens. You're going to have to take some risks, whether, I don't care what your business is, whether you're writing, you're a product-based or service-based industry, like, you're going to have to take some risks. And there are a lot of people out there that are just trying to separate you from your money to get you to take a risk on their thing. And it's really hard to know what's going to work for you and your thing. And I'm not sure there's a real formula for it other than say I have been fortunate to have a lot of friends who have done, maybe not what I've done, but just in the business world, who've been through similar situations or were able to help me and guide me and give me advice. But the funny thing about that is I have a lot of, let me say this. I have a handful of friends who have been like CEOs of very successful outdoor industry companies who I was fortunate to be able to call and talk to about some basic things, like when it comes to big decisions that I've had to make about our business. The interesting thing is, and they would tell me this, like at the end of the day, there is no right answer and you're going to have to make your own decision. And that has been true for everything I've done. At the end of the day, you listen to people, hear what they have to say, but it's all on you at the end of the day. And nobody can really tell you what to do. You have to figure that out for yourself. And that's both like, it's good. It's both good and bad. There have been times where I have called folks and I just wanted them to tell me like, this is the right path. Like you should do this. And rarely has that been the case. They'll say, oh yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I really, I understand business, but I don't really understand your market and your customers. You probably do better than, you got to do what you think is best. And I'm like, that's not what I want to hear. I want you to tell me what to do in this situation. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I've had a couple of moments like that when this time of year kids are asking about colleges and they have to make a decision between these 3 colleges. And I just say, I don't know. It depends on what you're looking for. Then also, once you make that decision, you got to go with it. And you got to go full bore. You can't have your foot in one college and think about whether or not you made a mistake with the other one. You just got to be there. And then sometimes I step back and think, oh, that's exactly what I should be doing with this. I got to make the decision and go because that like you said, that straight path does not exist. I've been so happy, and you talk about talking to CEOs and people, and just how willing some people are to be helpful, even if they don't give you direct answers. Through the podcast, meeting some great people, some writers, some other people who've just been so helpful in this whole process, and it's so welcoming. It can also be very cutthroat, and other people out there with the snake oil stuff, it's just crazy. But it was maybe surprising in the outdoor writing, podcasting, all that realm, how many people are willing to just talk, willing to give you advice, even if it isn't a straight up answer.
It is true. I mean, I have been fortunate to have people that have helped me, and I've talked about this before on podcasts where I've said, like, if anybody wants to talk, feel free to reach out. And guess what? People do sometimes. And I wish I had time. It's like I try and make time. Like, not that I have any answers, but there are some, if I can give anything back, people I try to in this space, and try and make time for it. I don't always have time these days to respond to everybody in the way I'd like, but man, people generally are very nice. And I know that's a broad statement, but if you come to somebody with a specific question or set of questions, not like a generic question like, hey, I want to, like, if somebody came to you, Jeff, said, Jeff, I want to write a book that's like basically the same title as your book and copy you. Can you show me how to do that? You'd be like, I don't know if I want to talk to you. But if somebody came to you and said, man, I'm just curious. I'm struggling to get started. I have an idea for a book. Like, I'd love to just pick your brain. I'll bet you'd be like, oh man, yeah, I could talk to you for 10 minutes, And I feel like most people are that way. If, even busy people, they might not get back to you right away, and doesn't mean they don't want to talk to you, but if, you might, if they have time, a lot of people, you might be surprised how willing they are to talk to you.
Right. You talk about being really, really busy. The main goal, or a goal, obviously is scale and growth. But if you look at, and again, this would probably be a good problem to have, Stone Glacier goes from a small company to now being bought by, was it Vista Outdoors? Mm-hmm. And then, obviously Sitka was small and now it's massive. Even outdoor content like Meat Eater went from small and gritty to absolutely a beast. How do you remain true to your roots as founder of Argali as it continues to grow?
Ooh, man, you're throwing some heaters at me today, Jeff. I to be totally frank with you, I think about this frequently, and there is no avoiding this problem. I don't care who you are or what your company is. If you continue to grow, you're going to have this problem. So you're going to have to deal with it. Let's see. I think about it from two places. Well, a few places. Let me just start with. I think about when I think of. We still have a guy. We're still in the position where I'm still in control, and my business partner and I are still in control of what we do. Like, we don't have anybody telling us what to do, and so we have the freedom to make our own decisions based on what we want to do. And I think as soon as I give that up, then we're in a position of not having control over the direction we head, who we represent, either the content we make or the products we make. For us, very early on, we knew what our North Star was, and we knew why we existed, and we have stayed true to that. So when I think about, what products we should make, like, there's a zillion products we can make. Sometimes we'll have customers come to us and be like, you should make this thing. And I'm like, that's a really good idea for a product, but it does not fit our ethos. It does not fit what we do. And for us, at least at this point in time, like, I still have the authority, the ability to say, like, we're not going to do that, because I'm not trying to appease somebody above me. I don't have shareholders. I don't have, somebody who's like, you got to, beef up these numbers for Q4, nobody's saying that to me. So that's, I guess, just like in a simplest form, Jeff, is like, we're not big enough to the point where I have to worry about somebody else telling me what to do. And I think the other thing is, very early on, we established sort of who we were and what we were trying to do and what our mission was. And we have just stayed true to that. And I don't see that ever changing.
Yeah. I asked you that question because I knew I'd get a thoughtful answer. There are some people that, when you talk to in the industry or whatever, where you're going to get some sort of just prepackaged line, some sort of politician about, what did this person just say? So,
right.
Yeah, I like and it's fun to support that too. When you have this small business that you can sense that there is a compass, and it's not just about earmarking, money that's in my wallet. It's fun to support that, and it grows, and then at some point, it seems to, in some cases, things cease to be what they were, and that doesn't mean that it is different. You're cheering for growth by supporting the company, and so I think sometimes people unfairly mark things as sellouts just because they get bigger, and that's that happened with Sitka, and you're seeing with people that are saying that Stone Glacier's sell out, but you like the company and they grew, like that's good, right? But yeah, it's kind of weird, the stuff that we find to argue about or to get upset about in the industry.
So this is like the problem with, like, anybody's favorite band getting big. I knew them when they were small and they were, gritty, like, it's the same exact thing, right? So for me, the band Kings of Leon.
Yeah.
So before Kings of Leon was a pop band, they were like, I don't know if you listened to them, but I did back in the day, before they were popular at all. And they were punk rock and gritty and just like super edgy. And then they made an album that was straight pop, and they never looked back. And I was so angry at Kings of Leon because they were a straight punk band, and I love that part of them. And then they went pop, and I'm sure they were like laughing all the way to the bank, right? But I don't begrudge them or any band for getting big and trying to grow. And it's like, I feel the same way about companies, right? So I don't know Stone Glacier situation at all, but I'll just say, like, as a company, small company like us, like, there are lots of things we would love to do, but you're always constrained by the reality that you don't have the resources to do everything you want to do. I have lots of ideas about things I'd love to do. Reality is, I don't have the ability to hire a 15-person staff to work full time to work on them with me. We don't have, there's like resource constraints keep you from doing things you want. And when a company grows or sells or whatever, sometimes that can be a good thing for them, right? It can, from their standpoint, I can see how it might give them the capital to do what they really want. Now, it depends on who's involved, obviously, but I can see how also from the consumer standpoint, it's like, I like that company because they were small, because I felt a connection to them. And I almost wonder, Jeff, if it isn't because it feels like the reasons you fell in love with them, it's like, they're changing. I love the old you, not the new you, right? And I understand it from both sides, but it is interesting because that is what, if you're supporting a company and they do make good products and they are growing, eventually they're going to get to the point where, they are either going to, some things might change, they might get acquired, who knows what, but, and it can be hard for those companies to keep their identity, or they can keep it. It just really depends on the players.
Right. Yeah, I certainly don't think it's impossible. I think there's going to be a lot of big companies that end up getting bigger, and they're going to be fine. Just keep putting out good stuff. Yeah. Speaking of good stuff here, the latest thing you have out here is this Argali tent, and you did a podcast with Rock Slide. So if people want to go to get the real nuts and bolts about every little detail there about the technology, you can go check out Rock Slide and the Argali Tents podcast there. Why did you go with the tent? You go game bags, knives, belt. What was it about the tent that you really wanted to tackle?
So let's see, a few different things. The original design idea I had was for a 2-person tent. So I talked about this a bit on that podcast, but I'll just say it again. So, especially for archery mule deer hunting, I find that sleeping on ridges or in deer beds is something I do a lot, and I usually end up sleeping in a tarp for a variety of reasons. It's like weight, space, adjustability, especially for the early season, but I didn't really love a tarp for other reasons. So I decided I had an idea on a trip for a tent design, and I wanted to make that tent out of a certain type of material, and I just went down this rabbit hole on tent fabrics and materials and designs. And when I started really picking apart the things that I used and the things out there in the marketplace, it was like, the tent I want doesn't exist. And that's really probably the way a lot of our products get the ideas for them come from. It's like the thing I want doesn't exist, or I feel like there's an opportunity to make something that is different from or solve some of the problems I've seen. So that's where really the tent idea came from. And that's what led to everything. So it's all kind of like spiraled from there.
Obviously knives have been made before, tents have been made before. What was like a subtle difference that would be something you could pick out between your tent and another tent that features or the ability to have a little stove in it?
Yeah. Well, it's not so subtle, but a big one I'd say is fabric. Our fabric is different than what you'll find in most or all of the hot tents out there. And that's really the bread and butter of our tents. And so we use a sil poly fabric. So it's a polyester based fiber instead of a nylon based fiber. And really the biggest difference with that is that it doesn't stretch when it gets wet. Nylon sags quite a bit, and it's something frankly, one of the Achilles heels of nylon, and something that just always annoyed me. You get a heavy condensation or weather, and that nylon just sags quite a bit. So yeah, and poly just doesn't sag nearly as much. It does, I think it's like fractions of a percent that it will sag, but it's minute compared to nylon.
Is it a matter of like having a great tent? Is that a matter of sleeping really well? Is it being comfortable? Or a little bit older? Not to say that you're old. I mean, you get after it for sure. But what is it about a tent that makes it so important?
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
I think there's something ingrained in our human DNA to want to have a comfortable place to sleep at night. We are basic beings at our core, right? What is it, like food, shelter, and security? Those I'm trying to remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I probably butchered that. But shelter is somewhere in there. There is something about a tent that, in my humble non-psychiatric opinion, is really rooted in the things that we care about as human beings. So I think having a comfortable, dry and functional space to sleep is really important. So that's I don't know if that answers your question, but the other thing I'd say is I really value, let me just back up for a second. Anybody who makes gear can make something like the lightest weight possible, or they can make it really good for a specific application. When you look at most of if you were to go to like REI, and I'm not going to name brands here, but go look at some of the backpacking companies out there and see what they sell for a 2-person backpacking tent. Most of them are like coffins, or they're built for like 1.5 people realistically. Like getting 2 people in many of them, it's crazy how small they are to me. So when I think of sizing for a tent, and if we create a 2-person tent, which we do, our Rincon 2-person tent, I call it a spacious 2-person. It's still a super light tent, but it also needs to be functional. As a hunter, I want to be able to put my backpack in there. I want to be able to have like my sleeping setup, my bag, my pad, and I want to be able to like cook and eat in there. I don't need a ton of space, but I want some space. I don't want to feel like I'm in a coffin. And so all of our designs are meant to have space and be functional, but still be really light for backcountry hunting and backpack hunting. And the other thing I tried to do is just simplify the way in which all of our tents, they set up and the way that they perform. So across our entire tent line, and we have more designs coming, they all set up and pitch the exact same way. And it's very simple. You're basically pitching a rectangle and then putting a pole in the center and then pitching out the rest of the guy out points. There shouldn't be any guesswork on pitching it. It should be very simple, very consistent, and very easy. So you can get your tent up fast and easy. And then once you get it set up, you have a nice comfortable space to go to sleep. And I do think that matters, honestly, because if you're just not getting enough sleep, your motivation goes down the tubes, your cognitive function is not what it should be, your decision-making ability goes down, like all the things that we know from why sleep matters all come back to tents, sleeping bags, and pads.
Yeah. Do you think we get caught up too much in the sufferfest or the minimalism? I got really, it was wet and cold, but I powered through. Do you think we get a little bit too caught up in some of that unnecessary suffering as hunters, outdoors people?
Yeah, it becomes like well, let me say this. I think sometimes there's a bravado element to it that we get carried away with, and I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
I do a lot of things in my life that some people would consider sketchy, but I don't talk about them publicly because I'm not trying to, portray myself in a certain way or make people think I'm tough or a badass, right? I think there are some people in our world, Jeff, who very much are trying to create an image around themselves. And so, yes, there is this I was X miles deep and I went so hard in the paint. And at the end of the day, nobody cares, right? Go out and have fun and do what you want to do. If that means you're truck camping, that's fantastic. If that means you're backpacking, that's great. At the end of the day, nobody cares, and everybody should just be doing what they find to be fun and entertaining. I will say that what gear does, though, Jeff, to me, is good gear can help you have a good time, whatever it is you're doing and however you decide you want to do it. But yes, for the love of God, hunting is not a contest about who's tougher and who's better. It's just go out and have fun. And I think for the most part, most people do.
Yeah. There was a guy I heard of up here who would go mountain goat hunting and just went out in a blue tarp and a cotton Walmart sleeping bag, and then would post videos of him. Yep, just got my tarp and my sleeping bag. Why? 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 What is the point of that? Well, it doesn't make any sort of sense. I have really found freedom in not buying so much gear. I used to buy a whole bunch of gear, and now it's nice to have nice things and then save money. I haven't bought a new fly rod in years. Well, actually, no, that's not true because I bought one anyway. But before that, I hadn't bought one in years, and it's nice because you have that money. It's like the ultimate side hustle is first to not be pissing away money. Once you've stopped pissing away money, then, you can, it's just so liberating. But there is such a nice feeling about having nice gear. And like you said, the nice tent. I started the deer season last year in a tent. It was foggy and rainy with my wife. We were just soaked. And so we had 5 days of daylight, or 5 hours of daylight, that it was too soupy to even go outside the tent, but you're just soaked. And there's not enough room in this 1.5 man tent to do anything except for try to dry out clothes. And it was miserable. And the next morning, woke up pretty tired. It broke, ended up getting a nice buck, but man, it was miserable. And then I ended the season, the last alpine trip I made with a buddy who had a hot tent, and I thought, this is exactly what it's about. Because it was foggy again, but we had quality hours just hanging out. We'd go out into the rain a little bit. We'd chop some little bits of wood, bring it back inside, and just to be able to be warm and refreshed in the morning, it was so huge. And it wasn't like we were packing that much more weight because those tents are fairly light. But oh man, saving money, buying some great gear and enjoying it and using it, that's way better than trying to, I don't know, prove yourself, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I like the Jeff Lund School of Economics. You might have a financial help book in your future. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, let me just put it this way. There are very many customers who it seems like buying a $200 knife is a stretch for them. And if I sense that, I will tell them, listen, you don't need this knife. If you're just looking to go out and get, especially people that are getting into hunting who feel like, man, I need to have a nice stuff. It's like, no, you don't. Yes, if you can afford it and it's and it helps you get enjoyment out of it, by all means, but you don't have to have it. It's not necessary. And certainly I didn't start out with nice, I had okay gear. I mean, a lot of my stuff growing up was hand-me-downs from, literally from my dad, my grandparents, or stuff I bought when I could afford to buy things, which was not very often. And over the years, you kind of slowly accumulate things. But yeah, I know what you mean. I think there is a consumerism factor to the industry. And I don't want to tell people I never tell people like, oh, you need to have this, you got to have a set of lightweight game bags. It's like, no, you don't. I do think there's an element that it will make your hunt more enjoyable if you're not packing around as much weight and you have like high quality stuff. Like, undoubtedly, do you need it? No, we don't need anything really. All you really need is a weapon and pair of shoes or boots, and go out and do it.
Yeah. I think there's definitely something to be said too for when you've gone through the entry level, then the kind of mid-level, and then when you buy it nice, you'll know and you'll appreciate what it is about that really nice thing or that premium thing, because it now matches your style of hunting, or you can appreciate something. If you think that all game bags have reflective lettering on it, so if you're rolling up in the night, or have really strong paracord, if you think that everything is like that, you're not going to appreciate as much. But if you started out with pillows, if you started off with a Coleman tent that just leaked, you're going to really appreciate, and you're really going to be willing to spend some more time out there and really love what you have rather than just throw money at new stuff.
Yeah, it's true, man. I mean, if you use things that don't work as well, then you'll understand why better quality stuff is worth the money. And frankly, I've had people scoff at spending the amount of money that our game bags cost, and it's like, they're an expensive product to make, and they're not cheap to buy. I don't think they're outrageous, especially compared to some of the other stuff out there. But if you're used to buying a $10 set of game, throwaway, literally disposable game bags, and then you look at ours and they're like $72, you're like, that's a huge difference in price. And then I explain to people, I'm like, yeah, but you can wash these and use them probably like 15 times if you take care of them instead of throwing it away. It's like, if you do the math, you've saved money. And it's like, oh, okay, well that and that way it makes sense. But yeah, no, I just think it's not a necessity. And once you've been through the paces and used something and figured out why it doesn't work, you can understand why good gear is oftentimes worthwhile.
Is there some piece of gear that you would like to take back to an iconic hunter of the past and be like, dude, check this out? Like, hey Teddy, check out these game bags, or hey Teddy, check out this knife. Do you think about the history of what they had, or just like watch an icon, a Fred Bear or something like that, take care of an animal? Do you ever think about the history?
I do think about the history. I've never thought about taking them a piece of gear and saying, check this out, although that's an interesting thought experiment. I think of, I think about Fred Bear going on a, 5 or 6 week excursion in the Yukon in old wool clothes and fixing his own arrows in the field, and essentially just living off the land, and wondering what the differences in gear and technology would mean to them today. I think that's a really hard one, because we only know what we can imagine and what's in front of us today. It's like, how do you I don't even know what they would say if I brought them a silk poly tent and our set of game bags, and they're like, huh, that's interesting. Like, I don't know why you need that.
Yeah.
Or maybe they'd be amazed by it. Trekking poles would be one thing. I'm not sure that they would have foreseen. In the future, there would be this product called carbon fiber, and it would be everywhere, and everybody would have this set of sticks they would walk around with.
Yeah. It's like a walking stick, but also not.
Yeah, it's like the old wooden ones you carve, but it's telescoping, and it's made out of this futuristic product called carbon fiber.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely do think about that a bit. Mostly, I guess the way I think about it too, Jeff, is I just love reading the stories of some of their adventures and thinking about what it would have been like to have lived back then and gone on hunting trips, when some of these places that I go to today they're just not the same, right? There's a lot more people around. They're not as remote. Some of Fred Bear's trips to Alaska and Canada, those places are still wild, but it's not like it was when he was doing it. It's just different.
Yeah, one of the running jokes I have with some of my friends here is like whenever we're about ready to start making a track on X, you just say, just like the old days, just like the old timers. I gotta start my track. Wait, no, let me pause it right now. Let me check my maps. Yeah, just like okay, I'm soft. I need this, but that I'll use it and it's fine.
I think one piece of gear that they probably would have hated. I have a hunch they would have hated GPS. Call me crazy. And I think that I have a love-hate relationship with GPS. Like, I use Garmin InReach, but it took me a long time to come around to getting one, and I still kind of hate having it. I'll be honest with you. I don't like being in touch with everybody when I'm gone and hunting. I don't like knowing what's going on, and I don't like people being able to get a hold of me. I only got one because I have kids. Like, that was the only reason that I got one.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like some of the old timers would have been like, are you kidding me? People can just like get in touch with you no matter where you're at? That sounds awful.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel about it, Jeff.
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't be out here, youngster, if you need this contraption. But yeah, there are certain things that can prevent needless suffering, as we talked about before, and then also just kind of responsibility. Think about the other people. It's not as, there's a lot more of recreation in hunting and outdoorsing now than there was before, when it was more about, it was kind of adventure and it was about getting food. So things have changed to the point where, yeah, like if this is what I'm going to be doing for fun on the weekend, or 2 weekends out of the year, then I should probably take this because I don't have that background knowledge. But it's fine. Use it.
Yeah, it's fine. Like I said, I'm hypocritical. I have one. I use it, but the first times that I started going on trips where people were bringing them, I was like annoyed that they were texting people when we were out in the wilderness, like texting their friends and significant others. I'm like, what are you doing, man? And they were like, they're distracted, they're whatever, talking about real world problems or having conversations in real time. I'm just like, God, man, you're kind of ruining this trip for everybody by communicating with the outside world. We're here to forget about that for a little while. We'll go right back into it in a few days, but for a few days, can we be blissfully ignorant of what's going on out there?
Yeah, my wife recommended this book that I'm reading, and by reading I mean I listened to it on the way to school in the morning. It's called 4,000 Weeks, and it's about that's what we have on average, about 4,000 weeks in a life, and how there were, before we established a work day that necessitated clocks and everybody showing up on the same time, everything was done based on chores and timing that were in tune with nature. And now our ability to access times in which we lose sense of modern civilized time are some very beneficial moments, because it's all on nature's clock now. It has nothing to do with how we try to control and maximize or slow down or organize time. It has to do with real time, and real time has nothing to do with numbers. It's just the cycle of the day, and those are some great moments, days when you just have no track of time and it doesn't matter, and you just realize how ridiculous it is that we try to control, maximize, and organize our time, when that's really not where we came from.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, for me, that's what hunting is for me. The whole reason I think I love about hunting, the reason that I love doing it, central to who I am, is because it is possible for me to lose track of time for brief moments when I'm out on trips, and that's one of the remarkable. It's one of the things I love about it.
Yeah. Well, what do you got for a closer here? I know it's 2 hours later there in Mountain Time, so maybe end up with how can people pre-order tents or other stuff on Argali? Next stuff that's coming out for your videos on YouTube. What do you got?
Yeah, we're right in the thick of releasing our content from last year. We're on a bow hunting adventure from last year for a while. kind of release content for that, which will roll into all the trips we did last year. That's all currently happening on our YouTube. That's just at Argali. And then, yeah, you can go to our website at argali.com and find our tents. They're currently still on pre-sale. We're almost out of our first tents, so I don't know how much longer we'll be on there. And then, yeah, I think probably by later this year we should have a lot more inventory. Yeah, it's probably the best way to set people.
Well, cool, man. Thanks. I really appreciate you being on here again, and looking forward to watching the rest of your videos.
Yeah, always a pleasure.